Welcome to Unfinished Business. And today I'm joined by Larry Miller. He's the owner of Miller Law Group, and he is an author of a book called Success. Larry has advised and represented high-profile companies through make-or-break moments with plenty of successful outcomes. But despite all the verdicts in his corner, his business has been built on one core value right from the beginning: his belief in helping others get what they want, and in turn, you get what you want. So today is a real treat for us because I believe we're going to get to unpack all the journey of entrepreneurship and what that really looks like and the journey in building a successful business. So Larry, I want to welcome you to the show, and I want to thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be on your show.
So let's begin with this. I have this theory that many lawyers that I have met in the past have a high sense of justice and responsibility. I'm curious if that is true for you. And also, what early life experiences, if so, what early life experience shaped how you view a sense of fairness, justice, and responsibility?
When you get licensed to practice law in any state, the licensure board really wants to hammer into you this sense of doing what's right, do with justice, help people. But those are just ethics rules, and some lawyers skirt them, as we all know, and other lawyers do a very good job of trying to do the right thing. For me, the ethics rules didn't really affect me much because I grew up, and I'm not going to make this by any means a religious podcast, but I am a devout Christian. And when I grew up, I had a sense of that I'm going to end up taking care of people. I'm going to do the right thing. And so when I wasn't sure necessarily what that would mean until I was in college and I had an incident that said, I want to be able to help people. So when I went to law school, when I started my law firm, it was constantly, I want to put myself in a position where when someone comes in, we all have those people, whether it be on the street and they don't have money to buy a sandwich, or someone's being bullied and they just need someone to stand up for them. That's the kind of person I wanted to be. So with the law firm, litigation and legal work is just one of my options. But a lot of times it's been simply, and there's been plenty of times in my career where I'm literally at some place with the client behind my back and being the tough guy and saying, look, you're not getting to my client today. And so my driving force is I want to do good with everything I do. I want to be a superhero of sorts, and be able to protect everybody that needs help and make enough money that when you're sitting at a drugstore and someone there can't come up with enough money for their prescriptions, that you have a little extra money to help them out. And that's what I wanted my life to be. And I'm very excited to know that that's what it's become.
Yeah, I love that kind of that convergence of your sense of who you are. But why law and some versus something else? What
Well,
appealed to you?
yeah, I had an incident in college where I was working at a deli counter in a grocery store. And there was this woman that had come in. It was an elderly woman, and she had a change purse. And I happened to be up front, and she opens her change purse and she's counting coins and she looks at the ham. And we had a thing that we call it literally meat scraps. It was just ends off the meat, or if there wasn't good quality meat, we throw it in the meat scraps pile. So the pile that was sitting there in the deli counter was just a hodgepodge of meat and everything thrown in there. And she counted her coins and asked for a quarter pound of meat scraps, and I packaged it for her. And then she got it. She counted again and she asked for just a couple slices of cheese scraps, which was the same general idea. And when she went, I sat there thinking, I just gotten paid. I could have bought her some deli meats and cheese because clearly she was struggling to do it. And so I decided that next time she comes in, I was just going to give her the money to buy the meat with. And that opportunity came a couple weeks later, and I'm in the back washing dishes, and someone says, hey, some old lady just ordered meat scraps, and laughed. And I said, whoa, that's my lady. So I ran out front and said, hi, ma'am, what can I do for you? And then the boss comes around, grabs me by the neck and brings me back in the back and says, you're washing dishes today. I said, I'm well aware of that, sir. I just want to help that lady. The problem is I couldn't really say what I was doing because paying for meat would have been against company policy. So it really wasn't, all I told him was I wanted to go help that lady. And he overreacted and called me names and demeaning insults. And finally said, this is all you are in life. And you know what? You're fired because you mean nothing. And I said, well, I guess I need to talk to my father, who's a lawyer, and we'll see if what you're doing is appropriate. And he said, whoa, wait a minute. Let's talk about this. I think you're being irrational. And it was at that point in time that I realized the power that a lawyer has. And again, so I wanted a job where I could have money to help a lady like that. And I wanted the power that had respect and the ability to step in where people are being bullied and help them. And that one incident made me decide that no, a lawyer is what I want to be, and that's how we're going to do, make people better.
Wow, what a gift and clarity that must have been. That story is phenomenal. It gave you a why from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was angry. I was like, I just don't want to go through life knowing that people are going to be treated like that without at least doing my part to help.
Yeah, unfairly. So, okay, graduating law school could not have been an easy task. So, I'm curious, after finishing, did you jump right into building your own practice or did you go to work for someone else?
When I graduated law school in 2000, the market, the job market was very bad. It was a bad market or a bad economy at the time, and it was very difficult to find jobs. I was in the top third of my law school at Villanova, and I was struggling to find jobs. And so I was literally applying by county. I would take every lawyer in in certain county and make sure everyone got an application. And it did that over the southeastern United States and eventually southeastern Pennsylvania, I should say. I got one job, and I was like, "That's the job I want." So, yeah, I don't want any other job because there was no other job. But I started there, and what I didn't know is that there were two big firms that had just merged, and they were finding, they've merged just before I got there. So they're finding duplicates, and they were trying to come through and start getting rid of people. And I was first in or last in, first out, and I got fired. And a couple of attorneys came running in my office trying to say, "Hey, it has nothing to do with you. It's just a numbers game. We're in trouble." So I trying to find another job and was struggling to find it. And I was like, "No, this is my time." Remember that dream where I was going to start my own law firm and then I could help people and now's the time. And I got to tell you, it was the absolute scariest time of my life. I had trouble sleeping for years, and I just got married, so I'm looking over at my wife, and she's just being sweet and adorable and watching television, and I'm looking at her thinking I owe it to her to take care of her. It was a very scary time. People come into my office to start a business, and I always say congratulations, but I know you're scared right now, and they're like, "Oh yeah." I said, well, look at it this way. The next year or two is going to be the most exciting time of your life. You're going to be excited to be a business owner. You're going to be excited about the possibilities, but you're also going to be frightened out of your mind that you fail. And that much emotion and that much instinct that's going to be coming into use is going to make this time the best time of your life. And so I had started for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months with a new firm, and found myself without a job, but I decided to go for it. And learning the business and how to work, I was now on my own. So I had, a couple incidences along the way that I embarrassed myself, but for the most part, I out researched everyone else to try to figure out what I was doing before I made a mistake. And, you keep trying, and you figure it out.
I definitely want to unpack that, but I am curious. Did anyone help you? You mentioned that your father was an attorney, so were you able to kind of lean on his advice, or was he freelancing? Was he working with for a big firm? What was happening there? So who took a bet on you early, and how did that shape those early years?
Well, there were a couple lawyers and nice law firms where I'm at that wanted to hire me, and they saw potential. But again, I just wanted to do it myself. And my father was working at a large corporation. He was in-house counsel. And as it turns out, he was also dreaming about having his own firm someday. So when I started my own firm, I did it by myself. I realized I had to have someone answer the phones, or it would look like it was just me. So I asked my mom, who was a stay-at-home mom when we were young, "Can you just come in and answer the phones and make me look a little bigger than I am?" And she said yes, and I was on my own. But as I started networking and getting to know people, I mentioned that we also do intellectual property, trademarks, patents, that kind of stuff. And And as the request came in, my father would come over and work with the firm a little bit. And I actually grew his practice for him so that he was excited the one day he got to quit his job and join full time. I asked my father once, he said, "You sure you want to do this? This is pretty scary." And what he said was, "I would attach my ride to your shooting star every day." And so he was the one that jumped in, and I can trust my boss. So or not my boss, but my partner. And so I never want to change that. We don't cross paths too much. He does intellectual property. I do more general law, but I know I have someone to talk to. And if he doesn't have the answers, he usually has a friend that he can call and say, "Hey, look, this is the issue we're facing." And when I was early, that was a very key resource for me.
I I often hear, business owners that I've worked with in the past, particularly when it's a family-owned business, you hear the advice, don't get into business with family, but I always disagree with that. I, like you, feel that there's a sense of trust that's just unparalleled.
Yeah, as I said, money comes around, and like I said, I have a good relationship with my father. So maybe some people don't have the greatest relationship with their parents, or maybe they grow up, they just have a sense of distrust, and those are different situations. But for me, I would think I'm more normal, is that my dad would never hurt me. He's not, so when money comes in, I'm not worried if it disappears because I know it's taken care of, and I know I can ask, and I have a safe spot, so to speak, to ask of questions, and he's not going to ridicule me or mock me to other people. So for me, it's having a parent around has been a godsend. It really has.
Okay, so mom's helping answer the phones, dad's getting his hands dirty in the business, helping you along the way. And then inevitably, a few years into business ownership, there's always challenges that, tend to knock us off course. What were some of yours?
Well, early on, obviously, this is the key to any business, but you have to get income high enough. You're slowly and surely getting income high enough. And so I was steadily building the business. But one thing I hadn't had yet is a litigation experience. The cases that I had settled. And so I beeping along doing contracts, wills, and everything, and took care of some litigation, but they all settled. I had never been in a court yet. So it was about a year or two into my practice, and I get my first big case, and it's a big environmental issue. I take my clients, they're being deposed by another attorney. And I was here in my office, and my clients were sitting there, and this attorney apparently had a well-known reputation for abusing other people's clients. He did it kind of as a show of power. He wanted to see if I could stand up to him. So he's over here just berating my clients. I mean, yelling and screaming. And as a young attorney, I sat there, at least figuratively, with my mouth open going, "Oh my God, what do I do about this?" And I really didn't know. And I was really embarrassed that I allowed that to happen, but I didn't know what to do. So I came back, was telling my father about it. He's like, "Well, there's a trial lawyer I'd like you to speak to." And I spoke to him, told him what happened. And he told me that you have to stand up to him. And he told me how to do it. Okay, so I'm going to do better next time. I don't know, 3, 4 months later, we have another deposition, and we attend. This was at his office, and he starts to yell and scream. And I said, "Sir, uh, we're not going to tolerate you acting like this. If you continue to act like this, I'm going to uh, terminate the deposition, and you can go tell a judge why I had to do that." And he goes, "You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. You have to stay here. If you don't continue, I'll have the judge fine you." I'm like, "No, that's the first time we go to a judge. That never happens. And number two, I have the ability to tell him how you're acting, and we'll go out and fight in front of a judge." And that wasn't good enough for him. So he ended up standing up. This is the only time in my entire career something like this has happened. But he ended up standing up and came around the table to me. And I stood up, and he got in my face and said, literally, "I'll kick your bleep out of it right now. You want to go? You want to go right now?" And I stood up to him, put my face in his face, and said, "Anytime you want, old man." And when I stood up to him, he goes, "Let's just sit down," right? And at that point, he didn't abuse my clients anymore. It was normal after that. And it was just exactly what the trial attorney had told me, is that some of these people, they want to push you around. You have to show them you're not afraid of them now. And that, I will say, now that's the first time I was ever face to face ready to drop gloves. But since then, I've often run into attorneys that you can tell them coming. They start threatening you early and stuff. And yeah, I just had one the other day with this guy. I just filed a complaint. And he sends me an email and says, "This is no case. We're going to get sanctions, and we're going to penalize you and your client for both bringing this case." And I answered his email, but at the last paragraph, I said, hey, the threats aren't getting you anywhere. You might as well save your time, unless you'd rather me insult your client too by saying, you have no case and I'm going to seek sanctions. I said, if my guess is if I did that, you'd see it was worthless just as much as I thought you were. And it was just enough of a comment, but that his attitude changed after that because he knows he's not going to push me around. I'm 50 years old now. Like, you'd think that that's not as common anymore, but I still get some attorneys that are my age that they'll want to see if they can push buttons, and you have to be able to stand up to them and say no. Because a lot of
Yeah.
lawyers will be afraid to do that, and they start pushing them around. I've seen cases where lawyers got pushed around all over the dance floor, and I learned that that's an early lesson of mine, that you have to be able to stand up to people and don't be afraid. You may be shaking in your bones, but you don't show it, and you stand up to them. And so it's interesting in law that you have to do that.
So communication is a big part of what, your job in that courtroom is, as it is for anyone that's particularly in business when you're still the owner operator. You're trying to manage client expectations, you're trying to sell and put your best foot forward, you're trying to manage your internal team and leadership. What are through that experience, what are three pieces of advice that you would give to anyone starting out about how they approach dominance but assertiveness while still maintaining compassion?
Two things. Number one, you have to learn how to be a lawyer and how to speak like one. When I was a kid, and we were all kids, I had local young language that I used, and you start realizing that you can't speak like that in front of clients. And my name is Larry William Miller. When I was a kid, they used to call me Willie, and so that was my name. But when I went to law school, I realized that Willie the lawyer probably didn't inspire a whole lot of confidence, so I started going with my first name. And so I ended up having two personalities. It was funny for a while. People would go, oh, you like Larry? Do you know Willie? No, who's that? But there were two complete personalities that I had learned to speak with. And you have to, as a lawyer, you have to have a measured tone. You have to be able to don't get excited one way or the other. You have to speak plainly and make clear that you're serious. You mean what you do, but you don't ever really be intimidating, especially to your own clients. You need to learn how to be assertive and work the room. And it takes a little time. It's like learning a new language. You have to, and some of it's just listening to other lawyers, and you have to learn how to, like I said, represent yourself well. But another thing that I've learned is that this is kind of team building stuff, but everyone on your baseball team, everybody has a role, right? You may not be starter, but you're a great pinch hitter. You might not be a starter, but you're the world's greatest defensive center fielder. And everyone on a team has its role and its need. And that's why even if someone that doesn't play more than half of the games is just as important as the person who's playing every day and hitting 50, 60 home runs. And you need to respect everyone's role, because without everybody, you wouldn't be a winning team. Well, law firms to me, and a lot of times businesses, are the same way. Everyone here has importance. And I think it's important to make them understand that you see their importance and remind them of how they're a crucial part of this machine. I have a paralegal now. I've gone through paralegals so many times in my career. It's hard to find a good one, but I have one now, and she's spectacular. She's managing cases on my own. She comes in before you have time to start the day and say, hey, we got to file this today. You need to call this person. And I've gotten to a point as I've gotten older, I can't do business without her. I've got a secretary who answers the calls with a sweet voice, and people can be angry, but she calms them down. And a lot of people feel that we care about them just because of the way my secretary speaks with them. My father is still a lawyer here, and he takes a lot of my business and wills and things, but he's crucial that I have to be able to allow my time for other things. So we all have importance. It's always, you don't just look at people and say, you're important because you answer the phone, but you just want to make everyone aware of, I can't use compliments every now and again, just how much you appreciate people, because everyone's part of that baseball team that their role is necessary to win. And if you speak with respect and you speak to them as part of the crucial team, that they're just as important in this winning team as I am, then everyone feels like they're important and they're ready to come to work and do what it takes to make the team successful. And that's always a big thing for me, because there's no unimportant cogs in a winning machine.
When it comes to finding those fits, hiring for corporate or for your company's culture rather than just, accolades on a resume, what are some of your tips and advice for hiring and interviewing?
I probably aren't or am not the best person to ask. I had a lot of bad hires that turned out to not to be what I thought they were. But for me, yeah, I tend every interview myself, and I some of what I do is I just ask them, I get off the legal stuff for a minute, ask them what they do, just tell stories, try to get a feel of who they are. If you never get a good feel of who they are, then they're hiding themselves. And unfortunately, it could just be nerves on their part, but at the same time, you're hiding who you are. And I need to have someone that I feel good about. But there'll be people in there that you just get along with, and you see their they smile a lot, and you see their personality shine through. And then you take a look at their accolades and you say, okay, this person knows what they're doing. That should fit. But like I said, for me, I've had a lot of people that have come in that didn't share my philosophy, where the client's the most important person in our room, and that we need to do whatever we can to make them happy. And I hate firing people, but that's something you have to do in life. If someone's not meeting their expectations and refuse to get better, that's what you have to do, and you move on. For me, I just got lucky over time that I finally got the right combination, and I feel good about what we have.
I hear that challenge a lot, particularly when you do want everybody to win and you are team centric. It sounds to me like maybe you're a little bit of a natural coach. Has there been an experience where you had someone that you thought was coachable and turned out to be not the right fit? And walk us through how you were able to let them go.
Well, that brings to mind a paralegal I had. This paralegal was looking to be an attorney down the road, and I talked to him. I thought he was a great fit. He cared about people, and as time went on, as he was employed here, it became more and more clear that he had this air of superiority over people. And at first, I would come in and try to talk to him. And he said, yes, I understand. But then I hear from the back channels that he's over here badmouthing me somewhere else. And I just kept giving him time after time after time. And finally I said, like, it's just not working out here. I feel horrible, but you're just not seeing it. I would give more of a recommendation to people that learn from my mistake. Cause I know everyone has families, and I don't like firing people. Even if they're bad, I want to give them the chance to get into our team spirit and work here. But I spent so long with some of these people that it just hurt the business. So my recommendation to people is give people a chance, talk to them, constructive criticism. Don't hurt their feelings, but they need to know what they're doing wrong. And if they're not coming around, you're better off ending things quicker and picking up someone that does matter, because some people are just here for a paycheck, or some people are here because they want to be in the law. They think they're, lawyers, or even if they're not lawyers, they're just paralegals or secretaries or whatever. They think that they're above everybody else because they're in the legal field. And it's so prevalent. You really have to watch for it and get rid of it. It's kind of a cancer to a law firm that wants to care about people, and you have to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And it's painful for me, though. So I always took too long to do it.
Yeah. So I want to take this conversation a little bit and switch it back to the client perspective. Stressful has to be an understatement when it comes to working with high profile companies and large companies like you've worked with and had experience with. In that same context of conversation, tell us about a time where a right decision didn't necessarily look like a popular one, and how did you go about maneuvering through that?
The one thing about being a lawyer is that the client is my boss, and you really can't forget that. So when we're doing things, if my client's telling me no, I can't do it. And so I remember one time I had a case where I really thought filing for a summary judgment was wrong. I think it was going to waste time, and I could get it through a motions practice, with the pretrial settlement. And I was trying to tell the client that, so number one, it's going to cost you more money if we file a summary judgment, and I can get it at the pretrial. And he said, no, he had heard from people, summary judgment was the way it had to be. And we got into a pretty good argument about it. And I really stood firm, because I just, when you're a younger attorney, you'll do whatever the guy wants you to because you want to keep a client. But I've been doing this long enough that, no offense, but if people don't want to be here, then leave. I know my expertise, and if you're not willing to listen to it, then go find somebody else. And that's rude, but at the same time, like, you need to listen to me. I know what I'm doing. And so the person finally got fed up and said, "Oh, fine, you do what you want to." And I kept hearing about it, kept hearing about it. We got to the pretrial conference. I talked to the judge, and they ended up removing this cause of action like I thought they would. And the client came up to me and said, "I was wrong. I can't believe you did it that way. And I kept saying, okay, hopefully we're not angry with each other now that you don't hate me, but I needed to be able to do it that way. And eventually they come back and say, yeah, you did it right. And I'm glad that you're my lawyer, and I'm glad that I listened to you. And I'd love to give you maybe a little bit more specific of an example, but with attorney-client privilege, I'm not sure I can do that, but hopefully that kind of story, while I was taking all the names out of it, helped you.
Yeah. It's so applicable to, again, anyone. You're right. The client always is the one that you're aiming to please, but they have hired you for a reason. And I think it lends to your being a, not being able to not be bullied, even when your paycheck is at stake, essentially. And that's fear, especially in the early stages of growing a business. So I
Well, when
imagine
you
that
have
gets
enough Well, I say when you have enough clients that it doesn't matter if you lose one, you can afford to be like that. And I just had a call, literally just yesterday, with a lady that had this great idea. And usually clients where they're coming up with their ideas is someone who thinks they know the law, and they tell this to you, and they come in and this is what we want to do. But she called up and I dismissed it out of hand. I said, that's not going to work. She goes, no, no, listen. It's okay. I'm listening. And she kept going through, and she did a really good job explaining what she wanted to do. She stopped talking, and I was, you know what? That's a pretty good idea. So, she goes, okay, thank you for listening to me. I said, no, actually, that I didn't really think about that. That will work. At least I think it will. So we'll be filing a motion here, maybe today or Monday, to see if that works. But the nice thing is, if you become experienced, you can afford to lose clients. It's a nice feeling, but it's their case, it's their life. I have so many cases that come through where someone's financial well-being is at stake, someone's ability to feed their family is at stake, and those are heartbreaking cases. And you don't ever want to get to a point where you have all the answers and this person's, because it's in the end of the day, it's he or she that has to live with the ramifications of this case. When I was in law school, I heard a story about, I believe it's true, but this attorney a criminal attorney was representing a guy who was accused of a crime. Right before trial happened, a plea bargain was offered. And the guy says, well, what's going to happen if I take it? And the attorney says, well, I'll be going home and having a nice meal. You, on the other hand, will be going to jail. And his point to that comment is that we laugh kind of at the audacity of having it, setting it that way. But his point was, in the end, you have to live with this. This isn't going to affect me at all. I'm going home to have dinner with my wife. This case affects you. So as much as you may think you know everything, and maybe with experience, you know a lot more than the average attorney, but you still need to listen to your client. And ultimately, like I said, they need to be able to live with what happens. So a lot of times people are saying, look, I just want my day in court. I want a chance to say this. And at some point, it's their case. You got to let them do it.
Yeah, very well said. I mean, even as I think any consultant in any type of business experiences that when you want something so bad for someone and they don't want the same, and
Yeah.
you have to be able to give people the dignity and the respect to make their own choice and the freedom. That's not always easy.
Yeah.
Not always easy to watch. So, you guys practice a vast array of different types of law. How do you stay apprised with things that are changing and get experience? Like, how do you, rather than niching down like I've heard so many other firms do, how do you stay wide and still have the wins that you have in your corner?
Well, every lawyer is required to do 12 hours of continuing legal education every year. And so you should get a lot of information. If you take courses that are relating to what you're doing, you'll get new laws through that opportunity and find out, oh, things are different now. You change and you write some things down. Other, you just hear about news stories. And quite frankly, others, you hear it through other attorneys. But when you're doing, that's why everyone wants to have a niche, a specialty, because it's a lot easier to um, be correct with the law. It's really easy to understand promptly what changes to the law are, because you're only practicing a small area of law. Whereas a general practitioner like I am, I'm always at risk for missing something. And I'll tell a story that looks poorly upon me, but when I was a law student, we learned about the rule against perpetuities, and it's a very complicated theory that a lot of even attorneys can't get right a lot. But it deals with when you create a trust, the trust length can't exceed any life in being plus 21 years. And it sounds fairly, at least it does to me. I think it's fairly simple, but in practicality, it's hard to apply. I was speaking with another attorney. This has been many years later, and I'm speaking with an attorney, and I was talking about, yeah, ruling as perpetuities, I think, may prohibit that. And he just looked at me and was very, very polite. He looked at me and said, "Well, it's a good thing that got overturned in 2015, right?" And I go, "Oh, yeah, that's right, that's right." And sometimes you embarrass yourself because you missed it. But that's why we all make mistakes, I guess, too. But you really have to limit how often that mistake gets made because you need to be on top of things. And thankfully, the areas I practice don't change very often. But occasionally there's laws you need to be on top of. And that's why you need to be in contact with other attorneys and why you need to take these continuing legal education courses so that you catch these mistakes.
Yeah. And again, wise, applicable advice to any type of business, not necessarily just law. To you said you had mentioned earlier out researching everyone else. Do you create like is there a habit that you had, early in your practice as you were continuing to get some cases under your belt that you still have in place in regards to research and preparation today?
Well, one thing, when I was younger and started in the law, I kept getting the same judge over and over again. An older guy, um, a really good judge, but I just kept running into him. And he would argue. I would bring a motion or preliminary objection or something to him, and he would argue with me every time. Um, I saw other lawyers, sometimes they do cattle calls where you're bringing in like 15 cases and they all come up and argue when their case is called and then they go home. So I'm seeing how other lawyers are interacting with this judge. It's no big deal. But when I get up there, he's arguing with me left and right. And it was difficult. And I went to a Christmas party the one year. His clerk was at the Christmas party. I said, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" Just privately, of course. And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Why does this judge hate me?" And he looked at me with, he doesn't. I said, "Oh, yes, he does. I can't get anything past him. He argues with me. He tries. The other lawyer's not even asking the questions. He's asking the questions, trying to defeat me." And the guy smiled and says, "No, you don't understand." He goes, "This judge loves to have legal discourse. He wants to argue about theory and what's right." He goes, "You're the only one that's researched enough on every case that he can argue with that like. Well, argue it like that with him."
Oh,
So he goes, so, no, it's a complete compliment. He thinks you're great. Of course, okay, but then I had a challenge now in front of me to make sure that every case. But back then, I wasn't sure of anything I did. And so, if I brought a complaint, what I would do is go in, like say I wanted a breach of contract complaint. I would go into the pathonetary back then. This is before everything got, electrically filed and things. And I would ask for, "Hey, can I see a breach of contract complaint that's been filed recently?" And they would always help me and go find one. And I would look at how they wrote it and mimic my complaint the way they did it. But I would go read cases, anything I could about breach of contract, looking for cases, anything that could possibly come up because I was frightened that badly of losing. I have a tremendous fear of failure. And people don't believe that because I look like I'm confident and I don't worry about it. But trust me, it's a fear of failure that keeps me up at night. Still does. If I'm in before a trial, I can't sleep a couple nights before because I have such a tremendous fear of failure. But one thing the fear of failure has done for me is that I sit around thinking of all the ways I could possibly lose and coming up with ways to preempt that attack. So when I get into an argument in front of a judge, and the judge says, "Oh, what about this?" It used to be anyway. I would used to pull out a thing. "Well, what about this case?" And I would read it to him, and this judge in particular, would smile and go, "Yeah, but the Robbins case." "No, sir, I read the Robbins case. That doesn't apply." And so there was such a interaction with cases that there was nothing that could happen where I wasn't prepared. And early on, when you don't know everything, you're afraid of surprises, some aspect about the law you didn't know. And the way to overcome that is just work harder. And I think in legal fields, that's called paying your dues. Early on, you need to work harder and longer than everybody does because you have to do that research. You have to look at cases. You have to read. You should be frightened as an attorney to lose any case that you go in there. And I am. And if you are, you're going to make everything you possibly can to make sure that doesn't happen. And when you research like that and you come in, like, say, as the judge once told me, he said, you knew more about every case than your older counterparts did. And then as you get older, you've researched all these things so many times that it just becomes part of your general knowledge. And you
yeah.
don't work is hard anymore. I think, and in any business that you're in, same thing. Work hard. Research ways that this could fail. Try to attack your own business and figure out what could possibly happen, and then prepare yourself that you protect if something like that happens. One thing you'll find out is I often attacked other attorneys with the tools that I had researched to protect against something they would do. And I found out they were novel offenses in their own right. And one arguing against some other attorney was something I already knew the answer to. But early on, if you want to make it with the big boys in any field, in any profession, you have to be overly prepared and know anything that can go wrong and plan for
Yeah, I love that. No, no, absolutely. I think it's just
it.
wise advice. It's also teeing up your book, and so I think reframing the conversation around fear of failure and using that as a motivator to help you inspire preparation, I think is good advice. But let's talk about the book a little bit. What inspired you to write that? And
When I was a kid, I was a bit of a class clown in school. I just thought things were funny, and it was pretty easy to get everyone to laugh with me. But what I saw was that people started disrespecting my intellect because they just thought I was a class clown. So some of that stuck with me, and there were things that I wanted to do when I got older, and one of them was write a book because only smart people write books, right? So when I was in law school, at the tail end, I started writing on it. And then when I formed the Miller Law Group, yeah, I didn't have a ton of clients. So I would spend 2 hours a day in the morning, probably the first hour thinking about marketing ways to expand my company, and the other hour, maybe hour and a half of writing some on this book. After a while, I got done, but the subject of the book was something I believe personally and very much, which is, anyone can achieve success, but you have to be able to understand what your goal is, define what success is for you, and then sit here and come up with a game plan on what you need and how you're going to get there. And for some people, that game plan is going to be pretty easy. It's pretty easy for them. Other people will struggle hard, and they've got, handicaps in life, that social economic factors that are preventing them from trying their best. And those are all things that are in real life. You have those challenges, but you need to be able to make a plan to overcome that and still win. And when I became a lawyer, I wasn't sure if I really had the mental acuity to do that. And I know here at 50 years old, I'm saying words like mental acuity, but back then I wasn't sure. So I said, I want to be a lawyer. I want to help people. And what do I need to do to get there? And again, it's just researching. As I found things that came up that was most people would quit at, I didn't give up. I just maybe I altered my plan to get around whatever challenge was there, but you keep trying. The nice thing about life, life is hard, but the one wonderful thing about life that I like to tell kids is, you don't have one chance and you're done usually in life. Like your chance of success, you can fail 10 times and on the 11th shot, you finally get it right and you're a success now. A lot of, Donald Trump and Milton Hershey and a lot of people failed many times before they became successful. And so the nice thing about life is you have a chance to keep trying. You never really fail until you quit. And so I wanted people to particularly young people, to understand that if you're don't say that I was born here and we don't go to college, or people my age group just they don't understand law, or whatever it is that you think can stop you. Refuse to ever accept the word no. And that principle, by the way, has done me very well. I've played baseball with friends and lacrosse with friends and ice hockey with friends. And we've played at professional arenas a lot. And people have seen some of our videos and gone, how did you possibly play at a place like that? Who do you know? And my answer was, I just didn't accept no for an answer. I knew what they wanted to hear, and you treat with people with respect. But if you come up with a game plan on how to achieve it and what to say and how to do it, it's amazing about things that you can accomplish if you just don't accept the word no for an answer. And so, a lot of times I would approach stadiums for various reasons and explain what I'm doing, and not everyone said yes, but a lot of people go, you know what? You have the guts to ask. I'm going to let you do it. And so just anything in life can work this way. If you think you can't, that just means you haven't figured out a way yet to make a plan to achieve it. And so I've done a lot of things personally. I've done things professionally that I didn't think I could achieve, but when I thought about it and made a game plan to get there, I achieved it. So that's really what the book is about. It gives a lot of examples of how to run your life and how to, you define the goal, you make a plan to get to the goal. And it just gives stories and different ways you can think about it. And I love the book for that reason. I've been asked to do speeches to schools to talk to kids about success. And I always give everyone a copy of my. And for those that are out there listening to this, I don't care how old you are, what situation you're in, what kind of debt you might have. You may have a couple of kids and you have a small income. And these are all difficult situations, but it doesn't mean you can't still be what you want to be. We only live once, and you might as well achieve everything you want. There's no reason not to.
I love that mindset. I love that thinking. I definitely want to make sure that we link the to your book in the show notes. So where is that available?
It's still available in bookstores. It's been old enough now, though I don't know who still carries it. I had a friend from Virginia that wanted to surprise me by buying my book, and we were showing up at a lacrosse game in North Carolina, and he wanted to pull the book and just say, "Can I have your autograph?" And he did, and it just made me smile. But I was like, "Where'd you get it?" He goes, "Oh, I tried everywhere." And he found a bookstore in Illinois that carried it. So it's out there. If you have a request and you can't find it, you can contact me at the Miller Law Group. Well, I'm glad to get copies out to people.
Well, a couple of final questions for you as we wrap up. I mean, obviously, this show is called Unfinished Business for a reason. So I'm curious, what is still unfinished for you and your work at Miller Law?
Well, I have a personal thing that may make you laugh. I've been the host of my own television show. I've been on television. I've written a book. All these weird things like in my personal life that I wanted to achieve. But there's one thing I haven't yet, and it is I want to be on the cover of a magazine somewhere. It doesn't have to be Time Life. It doesn't have to be, Sports Illustrated. I just want to be the cover of a magazine. So I'm still working on that. We'll see. And obviously, I don't spend a ton of time trying to accomplish that because I have other things to do, but it's still something I want to accomplish before I'm done. And with the law, I still want to grow a little bit. I'm starting to get old enough now that, I mean, retiring is not around the corner yet, but it is something I'm starting to think about. So we want to expand the Miller Law Group. Probably, we just had an attorney retire on us. So I'd like to expand probably by one or two attorneys and keep the firm growing. And so I think that's kind of where we're at. And that means we have to, justify more attorneys coming in with more business and more ways to get incomes. Hopefully that's something we can do. And hopefully that by the time I'm ready to leave, I have the Miller Law Group at about 5 or 6 attorneys, which for us was always the goal. We never wanted to get too big because we feel that uh, when you get a big attorney, it becomes all about money and people don't care about clients enough. So we were always said that 5 or 6 attorneys is as big as we ever wanted to get. And, so that's kind of where I want to be next, is just kind of shoot towards that goal. Miller Law Group's in a good place.
I love that.
And also
Okay,
just to
final
say
question.
that my son wants to be a lawyer, and he doesn't seem to get the hint when I tell him that you could do far better in your life. But if he's going to college now and wants to go to law school, I said, it would be really cool for him to be able to carry the mantle. So hopefully that will happen.
Generations under one roof. That's awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
so this last question is a question I love to ask at the end. It's sort of a hypothetical scenario here, but let's just say you accomplish everything that's on that bucket list. You've made the cover of the magazine. Let's say it's time. Let's go big or go home. You've done it all. At that point, but you can't take any of your works or your accolades with you, obviously. So, what are your parting words of advice? If you had 3 parting words of advice for anyone aspiring to do anything great, what would it be?
Never accept no. That'd be my 3 words of advice. Just keep trying. If you fail, figure out a way around that. But you can be whatever you want to be. You just got to keep trying. But in the end, what's been important to me is I've won some major cases. I've changed the law with cases twice in my career. Those are usually feathers in your cap when that lawyers like to cling to it. I changed the law, right? And I've done that through appeal work twice, and I've done a lot of great things. But in the end, what matters to me at most is my kids and my wife. And in the end, there's the people that are still here. There's what makes me feel great. And the end of the day, it's nice to win, but it's even better to come home and get a hug and do something where you can tell someone I love you. So never accept no, but on a side note, just remember you keep dear what you hold to be precious. And for me, that was family members and your friendships. Just in the end, I'm glad they're here. That after everything else, what mattered most was the love that you have in your life. And I'm very thankful for everyone that I have with me.
Words of advice. Larry, thank you for joining us. For anyone that is looking for a copy of that book, we're definitely going to put his contact information in the show notes, and just keep plugging along at what's unfinished in your life. Thanks for joining us.
It's been wonderful. Thank you.